Chapter 3. The Twin Dilemma. "This is ridiculous," Evan mumbled, adjusting the collar of his shirt for the third time. "I feel like I am in a bad sitcom." James lounged on his brother's bed, scrolling through his phone with casual indifference that belied his intense interest in Evan's preparations. "It is research, not a sitcom. You are helping me with dating competencies. By going on a fake date while you spy on me?" Evan raised an eyebrow at his twin. "There is nothing normal about this." The brothers were in Evan's modest apartment, poles apart from the sleek modern C7 dorm. Whereas James's living space featured cutting-edge technology and carefully curated designer furniture, Evan's home was comfortably lived in, with bookshelves overflowing and children's artwork tacked to the refrigerator, gifts from his kindergarten students. "Think of it as an educational event," James argued, finally looking up from his phone. "You do educational demonstrations for your students all the time." "My students are 5, and I teach them how to tie shoelaces, not how to trick women into dating my identical twin." "There is no tricking involved," James protested, sitting up straight. "I just want to observe how people interact without the idol factor complicating things." Evan sighed, recognizing the sincere plea behind his brother's theatrics. Despite their identical looks, the twins had taken very different paths since James was scouted by Stellar Entertainment 7 years ago for his dancing abilities and learned to sing in a soft, gentle, and distinct voice that everyone admired. While Evan pursued a traditional college route to become a kindergarten teacher, James navigated the life-consuming world of idol training, concerts, recordings, and filming. "Fine," Evan conceded. "But we are following my rules. No earpieces, hidden cameras, or disguises. You'll sit at a different table, far enough away to observe but not eavesdrop. And no interference." "Deal," James agreed quickly before his brother could change his mind. "And how exactly did you find this person for the practice date? Did you tell her it is practice?" "Muse is my school colleague," Evan explained, checking his watch. "And no, I did not tell her it is practice because it is not. It is a casual coffee between two people who might be interested in getting to know each other better." "But you are not interested in her," James pointed out. "Since this is for my benefit." Evan's expression turned serious. "I never said that. Muse is intelligent, passionate about education, and has a great sense of humor. Don't assume I am not genuinely interested just because I am helping you." This gave James a pause. He hadn't thought his brother might be interested in this woman. This was absurd because the goal was ultimately to introduce Muse to him, not to make her interested in Evan. "Let's establish the ground rules," Evan continued, oblivious to his brother's sudden discomfort. "I meet Muse at the cafe. You arrive 15 minutes earlier and sit somewhere inconspicuous. You observe silently. Afterward, we'll discuss what you noticed. And if it goes well, we can consider the twin switch for date number 2, James added hopefully. Evan's expression made it clear what he thought of that suggestion. "We'll cross that bridge if we come to it. For now, focus on learning, not plotting." Coffee Compass was a small cafe between a bookstore and a vintage record shop in a quieter corner of Seoul. Evan had deliberately chosen it for its low-key atmosphere and minimal risk of encountering dedicated C7 fans who might recognize James. As instructed, James arrived early, selecting a corner table partially obscured by a decorative plant but offering a clear view of the entrance. He wore a baseball cap pulled low and non-prescription glasses, a minimal disguise that would not draw attention but might prevent casual recognition. The cafe was moderately busy, with students studying and professionals meeting. Soft jazz played in the background, and the rich aroma of coffee filled the air. James ordered an Americano and opened a book he had no intention of reading, positioning himself to observe without being obvious. Evan briefly scanned the room, before sitting at a table near the window. He looked relaxed and unpretentious, which James envied. No choreographed movements, no awareness of being watched, just a young man on a coffee date. A young woman entered 5 minutes later, and James nearly dropped his book. Muse was not what he had expected. Instead of the conservative, scholarly type he had imagined Evan's colleague would be, she was vibrant and breathtaking. Her hair was pulled into a creative top knot, secured with colorful pins. She wore a sunshine yellow dress, with a denim jacket covered in whimsical embroidered patches. Multiple earrings lined up her ears, and when she smiled at Evan, her beautiful face lit up. James stared, forgetting his role as an invisible observer. There was something magnetic about her presence, a natural, unfiltered energy that drew attention. Evan stood to greet her, and they shared a quick hug before sitting down. James couldn't hear their conversation from his vantage point, but he could see Muse's expressive gestures and the spontaneous laughter that accompanied them. His brother seemed unusually lively and engaged, as if he were scoring a match point. A waitress approached their table, and Muse ordered a complex dish, using hand gestures to specify her preferences. Evan appeared amused rather than embarrassed by her detailed order, a reaction James found unexpected. He would have been mortified to give a server special requests. As their drinks arrived, James observed their body language. Muse leaned forward when Evan spoke, giving him her full attention. Evan maintained eye contact without staring, and his posture was relaxed. They were absorbed in their conversation, free of the self-consciousness that often marked James's interactions with non-celebrities. Muse threw her head back in laughter at something Evan said, nearly knocking over her elaborate coffee creation. She caught it just in time, which sent them both into another round of laughter. The sound carried across the cafe, bright and uninhibited, not the polite, paced chuckle of televised variety shows, but a spontaneous reaction. James shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His brother wasn't known for being particularly funny. What could he possibly have said to elicit such a barrel of laughs? As their conversation continued, James noticed something else unexpected. Muse was tactile, casually touching Evan's arm to emphasize points, and playfully swatting his hand when he made a teasing remark. Evan didn't stiffen or pull away. James sipped his now cold Americano, feeling increasingly more like a voyeur than a student. It was strange watching his face, or at least its identical twin, engaged in such an unfamiliar interaction. In his limited dating experiences, James was always aware of being watched, of maintaining the James image that C7 fans expected of him. He couldn't remember the last time he had a conversation where he wasn't scrutinizing his expressions and responses. He was so lost in thought that he almost missed the interesting turn in the conversation. Muse had taken out her phone to show Evan something, and whatever she displayed made his brother's eyes widen. Struggling to appear casual, James shifted his position to get a better view of Muse's screen. Given Evan's interest, she seemed to be scrolling through photos of children engaged in some art project, likely related to her work. Evan said something that made Muse nudge him playfully. Then she put her phone away and leaned forward with increased interest. Evan seemed to hesitate, then spoke with greater animation than before. James couldn't hear the words, but he recognized his brother's body language. He was talking about something personal. Evan rarely shared details about his family or background with new acquaintances, protective of his privacy and, by extension, James's. To James's surprise, Muse's expression shifted from one of friendly interest to one of wide-eyed astonishment. She leaned back in her chair, said something briefly, then leaned forward again with renewed curiosity. They must be talking about me, James realized. The thought was both flattering and concerning. What exactly was Evan saying? Muse's subsequent reaction was unmistakable, even from a distance. She laughed, looked relieved, and made a distinct wiping her brow gesture of exaggerated relief. Whatever Evan had said about him, Muse's response was not the typical reaction of someone hearing about C7's James. James's pride stirred. Was she dismissing him? Not impressed by his achievements. As their conversation continued, James became increasingly annoyed by their easy rapport. Muse was a sapient and engaging girl, the kind of person he had hoped to meet during his break, someone who could see beyond his celebrity. Yet here she was, apparently relieved that Evan was not the famous twin. After nearly an hour, Evan and Muse stood to leave. James ducked his head behind his book, not wanting to be spotted. Through his peripherals, he saw them exchange another hug, this one lingering slightly longer than their greeting. Muse said something that made Evan smile. Then she bounced out of the cafe with the same energy she'd entered with. Evan remained at the table, ostensibly checking his phone, but he gave James time to exit as they'd planned. James gathered his things, keeping his head down as he left, irritation and curiosity battling for dominance in his mind. "You did not tell her about me?" James teased the moment they reconvened at Evan's apartment. Evan hung his jacket on the hook by the door, unsurprised by his brother's impatience. "She made that feud gesture. What did you tell her?" James followed him into the kitchen, without giving Evan a chance to catch his breath. Evan filled his electric kettle and set it to boil, methodical as always. "It came up naturally. She noticed me checking my watch and asked if I had somewhere to be. I mentioned meeting my brother later, and she asked if we were close. Oh, I knew it. And I told her we are identical twins, but lead very different lives. That I teach kindergarten, while you are in a boy band." James clarified. "You did not specify C7? "I did not," Evan confirmed, selecting a tea bag from his organized collection. "I just said you are in a band that tours globally. She assumed you were in an indie rock group or something." "And that is when she looked relieved?" Evan measured honey into his mug, avoiding a direct answer. "Evan." His brother sighed. "She said, and I quote, 'Oh, thank goodness you are the teacher. I can't stand the idol scene, all those perfectly polished looks. No offense if your brother is into that, but it seems fake.'" James sulked, genuinely offended. "Fake? She doesn't even know me." "She was not talking about you specifically," Evan apologized. "She may have been expressing an incorrect opinion about the industry." "An uninformed opinion," James muttered, dropping onto a kitchen chair. "Did you defend me at all?" "I said not all idols are the same, and that you work incredibly hard at your artistry." Evan poured hot water over his tea bag. "But I did not reveal your identity, if that is what you're asking." James ran a hand through his hair, satisfied. "Perfect, that she thinks I am some random nobody in a garage band, not to make it uncomfortable when I meet her. Hope you did not change your mind?" "More or less," Evan agreed mildly. "Though she did say she'd be open to meeting you sometime, since you are important to me." Evan studied his brother, over the rim of his mug. "Isn't this exactly what you wanted? Someone whose celebrity status wouldn't influence?" "Yes, but..." "Ah, you wanted her to be impressed by you, not dismissive of your entire profession," Evan finished for him. "Did you at least learn anything from observing?" Evan changed the subject. "You were comfortable. Both of you. No awkward pauses or forced laughter." "That comes from not trying to impress each other," Evan suggested. "When you're just being yourself, there is less pressure." "And she touches a lot when she talks," James puzzled. "Is that normal?" "For Muse it is. Different people have different communication styles." Evan smiled slightly. "She is very expressive, physically and verbally." "She is also very..." James searched for the right word. "Bright?" "Not intellectually, though she is that too, but like sunshine," Evan supplied. "She has that quality of lighting up a space just by being in it." The accuracy of this description silenced James for a moment. It was what he'd observed, but couldn't articulate. Yes. Exactly like that. Did you learn about dating from your observations? Evan was prompted to return to the original purpose of their experiment. James thought carefully. That I have no idea how not to be an idol. Evan laughed. That is a very self-aware conclusion. I am serious, James insisted. Watching you two, I realized all my interactions have this performance quality. Even when I'm not on stage, I still perform to some extent. That's not entirely your fault, Evan pointed out. You've been trained to be conscious of how you're always perceived. It becomes habitual. But how do I break the habit? James asked, vulnerability showing through his frustration. How do I just be myself when I'm not sure who that is anymore? Evan's expression softened at his twin's rare moment of insecurity. Maybe that is what this break is really about. Not just learning to date, but remembering who James is underneath C7's James. They sat in quiet contemplation for a moment, their similar faces showing different lives and struggles. She is the one who is very peculiar, James finally said. Muse. She is, Evan agreed, a note of warning in his voice. Are you interested in her? James finally decided to ask directly. Romantically, I mean. Evan wrinkled his forehead. I could be. It is early to tell, but there is some slight potential. So, about that twin switch idea. James began tentatively. Not happening, Evan stated firmly. Especially not with Muse. But. James, Evan's voice was unusually stern. She is a person, not a practice dummy for your dating experiments. If you are interested in her for herself, that is one thing, but I am not going to help you deceive her so you can practice dating. James wanted to argue, but he couldn't. His brother was right. The switch idea, which had seemed clever in theory, felt manipulative and dishonest when applied to Muse. He saluted his twin quietly. Fair enough, he conceded. What if I met her properly? As for me, no pretense? Evan raised an eyebrow. As C7's James, or as my brother James, who happens to be in a band? The latter, James decided. At least at first. I want her to get to know me before the idol complicates everything. That could work, Evan said thoughtfully. She mentioned a children's art exhibition at her school next weekend. I could bring you along and introduce you naturally. Perfect, James agreed, imagining how the meeting might go. I will be on my best, non-celebrity behavior. That is what worries me, Evan muttered, but affection won over his concern. As James was about to leave, a thought suddenly occurred to him. By the way, what did you say that made her laugh so hard? When she almost knocked over her drink? Evan's lips quirked. I told her about when you tried to teach me your band's choreography, and I accidentally kicked over an entire display of watermelons at the grocery store. You did not. James gasped, mortified. That was 5 years ago. I can't believe you're still telling that story. It is a good story, Evan shrugged. Shows I am willing to laugh at myself. As James returned to the C7 dorm, his mind filled with thoughts of the vibrant, sunshine-like kindergarten teacher who was unimpressed by idols. His challenge was to be himself, though he was still discovering what that meant. When James returned to the dorm, John asked, "How was the spy mission?" The eldest member was in the kitchen, meticulously arranging ingredients for what appeared to be an elaborate culinary experiment. Educational, James replied, dropping onto a bar stool at the counter. My brother is a dating savant, while I am a hopeless case. That's bad. John sliced vegetables, showcasing skills he had practiced in his cooking class. Worse, James sighed dramatically. This woman, Muse, she's amazing. Creative, expressive, full of life. And she has zero interest in idols. Thinks we are all fake and manufactured. John chuckled. Sounds like exactly what you were looking for. Someone who won't be a fangirl over you. I wanted someone who wouldn't be blinded by my fame. Not someone who is actively prejudiced against my entire career, James clarified. There is a difference. So what is your plan? John asked, expertly julienning a carrot. Are you going to try the twin switch thing? No, Evan vetoed that idea. Deceiving someone into dating me doesn't feel right, James nodded. I'll meet her properly next weekend at a school art event, as Evan's brother who happens to be in a band, not as C7's James. Small omission, John noted. What happens when she eventually finds out? James frowned. I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. Or burn it. Whichever seems more appropriate at the time. Very mature approach, John teased. Whatever. How is your food critic romance going? James changed the subject. John's hand stilled momentarily. It is not a romance. We are having tea tomorrow to discuss culinary techniques. Sure, and I am just interested in Muse's educational philosophy, James snorted. Could be, John continued, resuming his paste cutting. Saul is fascinating. Completely immune to flattery or charm, but passionate about food. It is similar to my music passion. Sounds like we are both drawn to women immune to our usual appeal, James observed. Maybe that is part of the attraction. Or maybe we are tired of people who only see what they expect to see, John suggested thoughtfully. The dorm's front door swung open, and Jake trudged inside, looking both excited and frustrated. His dance clothes were soaked with sweat, indicating he'd been practicing hard. Success with the dance academy stalking? James inquired. Jake glared at him. I wasn't stalking. I was observing a teaching technique. Whose technique exactly? John asked mildly. Jake's expression softened slightly. Her name is Tina. She is teaching at Seoul Arts Academy for the summer. I watched her class today. From behind a plant, James guessed. From the observation area, Jake corrected stiffly. I'm going to approach her properly tomorrow. Introduce myself. As Jake from C7? John asked. Jake hesitated. I am not sure yet. She might already know who I am. Another vote for the do I reveal my idol status or not dilemma, James noted. We should start a support group. Where are the others? Jake asked, changing the subject, as he grabbed a water bottle from the refrigerator. Silas is holed up in his studio with that indie producer, supposedly sharing equipment, but probably engaging in musical warfare, John reported. Julian is practicing for an underground dance battle tomorrow night. Roman is attending a lecture on philosophical perspectives in contemporary art. And Vic is being mysterious, as usual. So we are all doing this dating project, Jake marveled. I thought at least a few members would back out. The power of a sacred pact, James said solemnly, placing his hand over his heart. The power of having nothing better to do during our unexpected vacation, John corrected with a smile. As the evening progressed, more members trickled in, each with a story of their first encounter. Julian was exuberant about his connection with the instructor at his dance workshop, who had purple hair. Roman seemed thoughtfully pleased with his museum curator. Vic was characteristically vague, but mentioned a shared understanding about beloved pets. James's mind returned to Muse's sunshine-bright presence and unfiltered opinions as he drifted off to sleep that night. Her dismissal of idol culture still stung his pride, but it also presented a challenge he was eager to accept. If he could win over someone predisposed to dismiss him, perhaps he would discover something valuable about himself.